January has honestly felt like one of the longest months of my entire life. It seems like during this month, there has been a lot of discourse and unrest, I guess you would say, on social media. People are very scared and nervous about the TikTok ban. People are very concerned about political future of the country. People are very concerned about stability within their business and creating consistency. And I've been thinking a lot about this. And one of the biggest things that I've seen coming up for my audience specifically is a lot of people are doing quite well with their marketing and they're bringing in leads, maybe not as consistently as they want to, but they're getting applications, they're getting leads coming in. But there seems to be a gap for people within the sales process and a lack of understanding when it comes to how to effectively sell in a way that isn't going to make you feel gross, isn't going to make you feel icky, and doesn't feel like you're pressuring somebody into a sale, because ultimately what we want to do is persuade, never to pressure. This episode, what I would like to do is break down essentially the secret to my own 85+% close rate. And our closers they fluctuate between 40 and 60% of close rate, sometimes up to 80 when we're running different promotions. And the conversion and their close rate is a lot higher than average because we don't run ads. We do completely organic marketing currently. So the people that they are having calls with and having conversations with are much warmer leads. They're people who have typically consumed my content for a while and they've had more than enough touch points with us to actually make a purchase decision. So when we get them on the phone and we're able to have a conversation about what's coming up for them and what they're needing, we have a very high close rate. And it's not because we have to push people into making a sale, but because we already have that foundation of trust and connection and comfort there. And we take a very client first approach to our sales process because we want people to walk away from any call with our team feeling really good and feeling like they have a lot of clarity and direction, whether they end up working with us or not. So we definitely adopt a little bit of a different philosophy when it comes to sales and closing than other people in our industry. And it's something that I'm very proud of because I get feedback and DMs all the time from people who had a call with our team. And again, on both sides, whether they ended up working with us or they didn't, just thanking me for the call and letting me know how kind and supportive our team is and how they really felt like they were listened to and like they have a lot of clarity and direction walking away from the call. And again, some of them, they end up working with us and they reach out and they let me know like that was one of the best sales experiences I've ever had in my life. And sometimes people end up not working with us and that's totally fine. And they also reach out and tell me that it was one of the best experiences they've ever had on a call. So that's something that I'm very proud of. And I want to unpack some of the things that come into not only my philosophy and the framework and tactically the way that they operate in their calls and in these sales conversations, but also our approach and some of the things that happen prior to them ever booking a call that changes the perception and the way that these calls really land with our people. If you are not aware, within the coaching consulting industry, close rates average between 25 and 30%. We range between 40 and 80%, depending on what promotions, what time of year it is, what type of marketing we've been doing is very, very impressive in my opinion. And the thing is that similarly to the way that we create content, the way that we hit home to our clients' current realities and the way that we highlight their knowledge gaps and the way that we fill those specific gaps is very unique. And it also is consistent between all of our different channels. So whether we're posting on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Pinterest, whether it's a DM conversation or a phone call with the team, whether it's what's actually inside of our curriculum, a freebie, a low ticket offer, our email list, every single thing that we do revolves around the same pillars, the same processes, the same beliefs, values, and ultimately is rooted in consumer psychology. So when you understand, yes, your lead's personality type and their decision-making process, you can create a much more personalized experience that makes saying yes feel very natural and doesn't feel like you are pressure closing, because nobody wants to do that. It's giving used car salesmen, right? So we don't want to be doing that. So something that I've heard very often, and you can tell me if you resonate with any of these things. I hear a lot of people say that when they are in sales conversations, they feel like they are talking in circles, or what they're saying just isn't connecting, it's not landing, and they're like, I don't know how to communicate how valuable this offer is. I feel like it's just not landing. I also hear that people are ghosting calls after saying, I'll think about it. People struggle to overcome objections without sounding pushy, especially, financial, timing, and need to talk to a partner objections. Those can be tricky for people to overcome in a way without feeling like a sleaze bag. And you probably you'll if you've been experiencing any of those things, typically what this stems from is either using kind of a one-size-fits-all script that kind of ignores the 4 different individual purchasing styles, and or focusing too much on your solution without understanding their motivations. I think a lot of people, especially newer business owners, they think that the intention of a sales call is to sell their offer. You are not going to get on and explain how great your offer is and tell them all about it and talk about your results and talk about how great you are. This call should be about them. It should be about the person that you're on the phone with, and assessing, one, is this offer actually a fit for them? Is it actually going to fill the gaps that they have? And then number 2, helping them to understand how specifically your offer bridges the gaps that they have, if it is a fit for them. And when you shift the frame of the call from trying to convince them that your offer is really good to instead understanding what's coming up for them and then just kind of using your offer to fill in those gaps, you're going to have a much easier time, and people are going to walk away feeling a lot better and feel really good about that conversation that they had with you or your closers or whoever it is that's taking the calls. There are a lot of other things that I could go in depth on when it comes to your sales call, your sales process, because your sales process reaches far beyond just the conversation that you're having. It starts all the way back on your Instagram, on your TikTok, where you are overcoming objections. It starts when they click the link in your bio and they submit an application. The emails, the reminders, the notifications that they get, that is all part of your sales process. And it's important to be able to have data that will isolate the different parts of the process so you can see where you're falling short. So if you're finding that your show rate is really bad, you have a lot of people booking calls, but then you have a lot of people no showing and not coming to those calls, then we can isolate based on your data. And if you have a comprehensive process set up, then we can isolate what the issue is. Maybe the reminders are not giving them the information that they need. Maybe the reminders are timed wrong. Maybe people are booking too far out. Maybe people don't understand what the call is, and there's a disconnect between what's on the booking page and what you're telling them is going to happen in your emails, right? In really having effective tracking, we can isolate what part of your process needs to be tweaked to be more effective. We have a client right now that I've been working a lot with her sales process, and she's getting a really great amount of applications and is bringing in enough applications to do well over $200,000 in a month. But the gap that we're seeing now is within her sales process because she brought on a new closer. And it takes time to train a team and to train closers, even if they have experience, even if they have prior sales experience. It's difficult, and they require daily training and daily attention and daily feedback. And a lot of people don't really understand what goes into training a team effectively. But back to my point, we're able to isolate that part of the process and understand that, okay, there are specific objections that this closer needs help overcoming, because we've been able to look at the data and see exactly what part of the process is falling short. Really great numbers everywhere else. It's just these specific objections that are coming up, which is driving the close rate down. Because we have that tracking, we have a very comprehensive dashboard that gives us all of the information, all of the data from the first click to whether or not they purchase is very, very important. And a lot of people don't track the right things. People just track leads and whether or not they had a call call, they're not tracking their show rate, they're not tracking their offer rate, they're not tracking their close rate, they're not tracking even the open rates on the email reminders and the text message reminders that are going out. They're not tracking what the different objections are and the reasons that people didn't close. They're not tracking call length or duration, or looking at similarities and trends within the applications that are coming through and corresponding that with content, right? There's a lot to be desired in most people's data tracking for their sales process, but I digress. That's a different episode. And honestly, that's not something that I can teach in a podcast. That's something that we need to sit down. We need to audit your entire business, and we need to determine how to build that out for you. So if you want to do that, you can book a gap assessment with our team and they can go through and talk through that with you. But the 3 things that I want to cover on the call on this episode is discovery, pitching, and closing. Now, there's a lot of other components to a sales call. There's rapport building, there's the transition, there's tie downs, there's specific ways that you can handle objections and processes. And there's a lot of pre-call stuff that goes into this, but we're specifically going to talk about these 3 elements because I think it's really important. Now, what you'll find here is that after you've built rapport, what a lot of people tend to do is they let the client keep talking too long and then they let them take control of the call, so they don't set the frame effectively. I have a couple videos about how to effectively set the frame, but basically you are setting an agenda for what that call is going to look like so that they have an understanding of what they need to give in order to receive the information that they want to have. Then you can dive into discovery. And the purpose of discovery is to uncover 1, their current reality, what's coming up for them. Number 2, to understand their desired outcomes. And 3, what their gaps are. So what are the things that are keeping them from those desired outcomes? And sometimes you'll find that their current reality and the desires they have and the gaps that they have fit perfectly with your offer, and you're able to fill those gaps for them. And sometimes it doesn't. And that's fine, but you need to maintain integrity in your sales process and let them know. Don't offer and pitch people that are not actually a fit for your program. I like to think about, of course, the different types of buyers as I'm coming into a sales conversation. And typically I can tell from my very first question that I ask what type of buyer it is that I'm working with. Sometimes I can tell from their application, but it kind of depends how much information they give, but typically the way they answer your very first question should tell you what type of buyer they are. So we know that driver buyers focus on efficiency and goals. Analyticals, they care a lot about the process and ROI. Amiable buyers, they really need to build trust and you have to emphasize support with them. And then expressive buyers, you have to paint the big picture, showcase what the outcome is going to be for them and how this is going to be a very high level experience to get them from point A to point B. It's important for you to give your leads a sense of ownership over the solution and over making a purchase decision. And when people talk about letting people feel empowered in the sales process, this is the psychology behind that. So when we look at the neuromarketing tie into this, when people are able to articulate their own challenges and their own outcomes, and it's able to feel like a more collaborative approach, they're going to feel like they have ownership over the sales process. And rather than you trying to convince them to work with you, it's basically going to be their idea. So when you are going through discovery, again, there's a variety of different questions that you can ask, and it's going to differ depending on the lead, depending on your business, depending on what offer it is that you're actually pitching. But we need to check those 3 boxes. We need to understand their current reality. So what's coming up for them in all aspects of their life or their business, depending on what it is that you work with, their desired outcomes. So what their ideal version of whatever it is that they're working towards looks like, and then what the gaps are. And it's important that you don't tell them what the gaps are, that they uncover those gaps. And you need to ask effective questions so that they can uncover those gaps for you. Effectively, the intention of discovery is not only for you to understand their current reality, desired outcomes, and gaps, but also for them to sit there for 30 minutes, 20 minutes, however long, and explain to you why they need you. Don't underestimate the power of having somebody sit there for half an hour and explain to you why they really need your help. That will completely shift the feeling and the process and the way that you will have to handle objections as well, or lack thereof, at the end of the call. So the next phase, of course, after you transition is going into your pitch. And so people say like, oh, present your offer as the clear solution to their unique needs, right? You hear that all the time. But the thing is that what most people don't do is have a pitch that's customizable. Most people read off of a script, and that is the wrong thing to do. So what I like to do is I, of course, take notes during the sales call, and I will jot down 3 to 5 things that they mentioned that they need help with, that they know that they have gaps that they need me to help them with. And then what I do is I tie those individual things into the different phases of my pitch. So my pitch is broken down into 2 different phases. So I walk through my 4 different pillars of our advisory services, and then I go into the logistics and drop the price. So the way that I'm going to do that is, yes, I have a general outline, kind of a wireframe, if you will, of the things that I want to hit on. But what I do is I hit on those things in a way that I'm tailoring it to what they told me. So let me give you an example. If somebody told me that their biggest problem is lead flow and it's because they don't know what to say or what to post on social media, then what I'm going to hit home to is like, you know how you told me that you have no idea what to say on social media? Yeah, okay, we get the yes. So this first pillar of the program, so within the first month, what we're going to do is determine how you're going to speak to each of the 4 buyer types in your audience, going to determine your brand archetype, what you want to represent and who you want to target. We're going to do market research and help you understand exactly what you need to say to people to get them to buy. Then we'll move into the visibility part, right? And so then I continue on my pitch. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the things that I was already going to say, what I was already going to talk about to them, which is the fact that they're going to determine how to speak to 4 buyer types, how to, what their brand archetype is, how they're going to communicate that, and what people need to hear from them to actually buy. I was going to talk about that anyway, but what I did was I tied in what it is that they told me. So I'll say, so you know how you told me that you need XYZ? And they say yes. And then I'm like, okay, so this part of the program is going to solve that. And so what you do is you very concisely let them know on a high level what about your program is going to solve the specific problems that they have. So that way people aren't like, oh, well, is this going to answer this? And you're not like, well, yeah, that's what I said. You want to explicitly say, so you know how you told me XYZ, and get the yes. And then you can dive into your explanation about how each specific phase is going to help. So you'll notice that, and I told this to our clients on Monday when we had our training, I was like, you'll notice that the 4 pillars of the program, the 4 pillars that I discuss in my pitch, are the same 4 pillars that you see in my content. It all is interconnected, and it's done very intentionally so that your company is speaking with one message, one voice, and you are communicating the same message points over and over so that 1, there's consistency, 2, you create that trust and you build that response conditioning with your audience and with your leads. And then of course, it allows you to, like I said, maintain integrity in the sales process, because they're not coming in and being sold something that is completely different than what you talked about in your marketing. They're not even going to be on that call if they're not going to be activated by what you talk about in that call, because they wouldn't have been activated by your marketing. So in tying all of this together and having it be consistent throughout your entire process, from your outreach content to your activation content to your sales content, through your sales process to your sales conversation, all the way into your client experience, is going to be extremely important. The same content pillars that you have should be the same pillars of your blueprint or your framework. And so this should all be consistent throughout. So it's important to know, again, coming back to the buyer types and the way that you're going to phrase certain things. Driver buyers, it's important for you to lead with the results. So it's like, this part of the program is going to help you achieve X goal in the most effective way. Most people are able to check this thing off within the first month, right? And if you have that data and that information about your program, you're able to be even more concise and more to the point, right? Analyticals detail the process. So here's the step-by-step plan. So with an analytical buyer, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into like, okay, step 1, we're going to do a comprehensive audit of your entire business. We're going to look at this. Then we're going to go in this order, checking off these things, solving these problems that you told me that you had. This is the timeline. This is how it's going to work. Here's when you should expect to see results. And I'm going to pitch differently. I'm going to explain those things differently to an analytical versus like an expressive buyer. They don't care about all of that. They just they want to be inspired. They want to feel like it's really exclusive. They want to feel seen by you. And so it's going to be a different conversation than with an analytical buyer. With an amiable buyer, you really want to reassure with the support. So you're going to say like, okay, we'll be with you every step of the way. This is how we support you. These are the logistics of how you're going to be supported. And then of course, expressive buyers really inspire with the transformation. So hit home to what the outcome is going to look like and help them to understand, how this experience is basically going to be catered for them, or how it's going to be the best experience for them. Give insight into your process, and you're going to give insight into your process slightly differently than you would with an analytical buyer. where an analytical buyer wants to know the specific steps and like the tangible ROI, whereas the expressive buyer wants to lean more into the process and how it's going to feel, what they're going to achieve. So they want more of a high level kind of emotionally led conversation there, whereas the way that you explain that to like an analytical buyer is going to be very different. So again, with this, the neuromarketing tie-in, reciprocity. So showing how your solution is going to offer more value than is expected. And also people are going to be more likely to sign up and work with you if they feel like they've received value from this call. So if you can receive value, if you can give them value, if you can help highlight what their gaps are, if you can help them understand, what the transformation is and exactly how to get there. And again, we're telling people what we're going to do. We're not necessarily giving them the how, because this isn't a coaching session. This is still a sales call, but it's still going to be very valuable for them to have that direction and insight and understanding of where to focus their attention. And then also, leveraging the framing effect. So positioning your solution not only as like the easiest and most logical choice, but framing your solution in a way that is going to be understood and valued by each of the 4 different personality types that you're selling to. So then once you have gone through the logistics of your offer, the how, the what, then you transition into your close. And this is where you're going to finalize the sale by removing any objections and instilling confidence in the sale. So in looking at the 4 different buyer types and what they need, for driver buyers, an urgency close is going to get you it's going to take you very far. So if they're like, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds like exactly what I need, then my close for them, it's a little bit of a softer close, but I'm like, okay, let's get this started right now then. Let's get it going. And they're like, okay. And so I like to use that for a driver buyer, whereas an analytical buyer, they might kind of feel the ick if you did that to them. Analytical buyers, I would say something like, does that sound like what you're needing? And then they can confirm yes, and then I can actually close. Amiables, I'm looking to reassure more so than anything else. So I say, does that sound like what you need? Yes. Okay, we're going to guide you absolutely every step of the way. And I will reiterate the support. So what we'll do is this. Does that feel supportive for you? And they'll say yes, right? So you'll notice how with like an analytical buyer, I'm like, does that sound like what you need? And they're like, yes. And it's a little bit more concise. Whereas with an amiable buyer, I'm going to say, okay, does that feel like it would be supportive for you? Is that the support that you're needing? So you can see I'm just like shifting the frame of what I'm saying. I'm communicating the same thing. I'm coming to the same outcome. I'm just phrasing what I'm saying a little bit differently based on who I'm speaking to. And then of course, expressive buyers, I like to lean more into celebration. So I'm like, okay, I'm so excited to get this going for you. Let's go ahead. Here's your next steps. So it's going to be, again, a very different conversation. And that neuromarketing tie-in here is, we're removing decision fatigue by providing simple options, right? So we can option close. Do you want to start this week or next? Do you want to do Tuesday or Thursday for your kickoff call? The other thing that I like to think about is we're also removing resistance, because the way that we pitch is we are only offering one offer. We're not saying, here's all the different options. What do you think? What we're doing is we're collecting the relevant information. We're determining on our end what offer is going to be the best for them. And then we're pitching them that one offer. And so in doing that, in connecting it specifically to their desires and their needs and really customizing your pitch in that way, when you get to this close, you're not going to have sales resistance. Do objections still come up? Of course. However, you're not going to get objections if you don't miss anything. If you get an objection, it means that you missed something. It means that you didn't go deep enough in discovery, or you didn't connect a piece that was important to them to your pitch. If you uncover everything in discovery and you connect the things that are important to them based on their buyer type, and based off of the things that they've told you to your pitch, you're not going to have objections. Okay. Objection handling, honestly, is a whole other episode. But at this point, if you've done this correctly, you shouldn't have objections, only questions. So people might have questions like, okay, so what's the time on those daily calls? Or how long are those? Or if I wanted support on this specific thing, where would I go for that, right? These aren't objections, they're just questions, and there's a huge difference. An objection is a reason for them not to sign up, whereas a question is just them asking you about the program. These are buying questions. This is them considering it. This is them actually wanting to sign on. And then you can circle back around and close. ABC, always be closing. Let me give you a little bit of the why this works. Okay. So number one, discovery is going to ensure that you are actually solving their problem that they have. Not just what you assume it is, but you're getting deep into the data, the information, the current reality for them. And I gear my discovery questions much more towards data than thoughts or feelings, because lots of people feel like they're not getting enough leads. They feel like they're not getting enough views. They feel like they're not getting enough sales, when in reality, they're getting enough leads, but the data is telling us that there's an issue with their close rate. They're getting enough views, but the data is telling us there's an issue with their conversion. They're getting the website traffic, but the data tells us that there's a conversion issue on that page, right? So people's feelings about what the problem is usually not accurate. Usually people feel like they're not making enough money, and that's kind of the end of it. What we need to understand is the reality of the situation, and uncovering that reality for them and explaining it to them back is going to be extremely valuable for them, brings in that reciprocity, and also builds that trust, because you were able to uncover things about their own business, about their own life, that they hadn't been able to do for themselves. So this is part of where they are going to walk away feeling really good, regardless of if they joined or not, because you were able to uncover those gaps for them and point them in the right direction. Then we have the pitch, right, which aligns with their specific gaps and outcomes and basically explains how your offer is going to fill those specific gaps. And if you do this correctly, you are going to reduce resistance, because they're not going to have any questions of, is this going to work for me? Is this the right fit, right? Your pitch should answer all of those questions by hitting home to the specific things that they told you. You want to use the same words that came out of their mouth to explain to them why this is the perfect fit, and then you won't have an issue. And then, of course, the close is leveraging buyer psychology and helping every single personality type feel confident in their decision. So what I would recommend for you to do as your next step is to audit your sales process and incorporate buyer psychology. Determine what data do you currently have access to and get an understanding of what that looks like. And again, if you don't know how to compile that data or what data you should be compiling, feel free to book a free call. Like I said, whether you work with us or not, you will walk away with an understanding and clarity and direction, which is exactly how we run our process. So the other thing that I would look at is structuring your pitch to address specific needs and motivations. So in my head, I have kind of a checklist of things that I want to mention in my pitch, but I don't have a structured way that I explain it or read it off, because I want it to be fully customized to every single client or every single prospect that I'm speaking to. You'll know that you are doing this correctly when you have less objections. You have people telling you that this was a wonderful experience. It was the best sales call they've ever been on. And ultimately, you'll see your close rate increase. So I hope this was helpful for you. I hope this was a valuable episode. And just remember that closing is about connection, not pressure. So if you master really good discovery, you learn how to tailor your pitch, and you close in a curated way for each buyer type, and depending on who you're speaking to, you're going to see results. As always, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and DM me on Instagram if you have any questions or if you want to get into this a little bit deeper. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.